I got hit with debilitating fatigue, brain fog, which was so extreme, Elliot. Three times, I remember over the course of 2 years, the doctors admitted me to hospital because they suspected that I might have been having a stroke.
More than 13 years ago, Vish from the UK developed a debilitating health condition for no identifiable reason. And after a long search, he was finally diagnosed with a condition called fibromyalgia.
And with that as well, there was systemic pain, huge GI symptoms, gas, bloating, reacting to foods all the time. I would have pins and needles in my feet, my hands, the tip of my tongue would go tingly. It was really terribly scary. It's the most frustrating thing in the world when they turn around and say, your tests are normal, you're fine, off you go.
It's all in
And
your
I'm
head,
like,
basically.
it's in your head. It's in your head.
So Vish had actually come to me about 3 or 4 years ago for a health consultation. We'd done the call, and unfortunately the advice that I gave him was only of minimal help. It didn't really change much. So it turns out he'd been following my videos ever since, and because of that decided to start vitamin B1.
Everything's improved, Elliot. Everything is improved. I have a significant increase in energy, a rapid increase in cognition. So my memory's really improved. It's really helped to calm everything down in terms of my digestive system as well. My motility's improved as well. And B1 has had a big part to play in that healing journey. No doubt about it at all.
And since he did that, he's seen a pretty miraculous turnaround in his health condition just this year. So stay tuned if you want to hear his story. Right, so, okay, today, guys, I am joined by a very special guest once again. This is Vish, health and wellness advocate from the UK. Thanks for coming on, Vish. How's it going?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing, Elliot?
I'm very good today. Vish got in contact with me recently after seeing one of the interviews that I'd done with someone else on the topic of B1 and really wanted to come on and share his story. So Vish, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? What health issues were you previously dealing with? What's your background? Where have you come from?
So background and where I've come from is I've come from a science background. So my particular role, I'm involved in education consultancy, and I kind of help a lot of places around the country improve science outcomes. So that's my background in terms of role. So I've always had a really deeply involved kind of mindset in science. And 13 years ago, I got hit with a condition called fibromyalgia. I can't even put that into words about how debilitating that whole process was. Um, I got hit with debilitating fatigue, brain fog, which was so extreme, Elliot, that I could read something. I could literally read something in front of me, and somebody would ask me 2 minutes later about what I just read, and I wouldn't have a clue what I just read. It just wouldn't go into the long-term memory whatsoever, despite so many different ways of trying to reread things and elaborate things and do lots of things with it and question myself about it. I just would forget like that. It was just so awful. To the point where actually, when you're clambering in the dark for explanations and whatnot, I was thinking that I was developing Alzheimer's, for example. It was really terribly scary. I would read things and there'll be visual disturbances across the page, so it would feel like my eyes were wavering. Words would waver, as though, when somebody is dyslexic, they sometimes the structure of the words, the lexicon kind of changes in its directionality. So that was almost happening to me, but actually it was the wobbling that was also quite scary. And indeed, speech issues was a huge issue. So sometimes I would just slur. And to the point where 3 times, I remember over the course of 2 years, the doctors admitted me to hospital because they suspected that I might have been having a stroke.
Huh.
It was so awful. And then with that as well, I remember I used to stand up and I'd just be standing on the side and I'd be supervising and whatnot, some students, and my heart would just go boom and start fluttering, and arrhythmias would occur just out of nowhere. And it was just so terribly scary. And with that as well, there was systemic pain, huge GI symptoms, gas, bloating, reacting to foods all the time. I couldn't have any high GI foods. High FODMAP foods was a complete no-no. Acid reflux was happening all over the place. And I'll tell you what, the neurological issues were some of the scariest, because of course I would have pins and needles in my feet, my hands, the tip of my tongue would go tingly, and numb. That was the other thing. Numbness was really scary. So when you've got, I mean, it was a perfect storm for me in terms of intellectually and physiologically, because I knew that this was not normal, and your natural brain is going to have a propensity to start looking into these sorts of things, because when you have peripheral neuropathy twitching all over the body, like 1,000 ants crawling underneath your skin, as well as having all of these other symptoms, you're a mess. I was a mess, a total mess. And then with that, and by the way, this conversation isn't anything to do with mental health, but the natural consequence with having all of these physiological symptoms is that your mental health, you will feel low-mooded, if that's the word. We're going to go with it. It's the word now. But you will feel like you've got low mood. You will feel depressed. Yeah. And I remember having crushing anxiety, Elliot, over the fact that I thought I was going to die.
Right. And you've gone to the doctors, right, on the NHS, and what were you told?
You've got ME, chronic fatigue syndrome, which, by the way, at the time in 2014, that diagnosis occurred, when in fact I was having the symptoms since 2011. So it took 3 years for the diagnosis, in which time they tried to diagnose me as having potentially myasthenia gravis, which is a horrible neurological condition, because they found the antibodies in my blood. So they did some further investigations, found out that I didn't have it, thankfully, which would have been really bad. Not that this isn't really bad, but that is pretty nasty. And the doctors basically said it's a progressive illness. You're never going to recover. You just have to manage the symptoms. Good luck. Off you go. There you go. And then, one of them, who was just a total delight, he was just so supportive, turned around and said, he says, "You're asking for a lot of blood tests, Vish. So I would recommend that you perhaps consider stopping chasing rainbows and just get on with your life." Nice.
With all of those symptoms, just get on with your life. You've got fibromyalgia, body pains, neuropathy, strange tingling. You can't digest any food. You've got acid reflux. You've got all of this other stuff going on, and you're debilitated with fatigue, but you should just get on with your life, right?
Get on with your life. Sorry, I forgot to say as well. I'd lost 2 stone in weight.
Right.
Just like that. Within like a space of 6 months. Lost 2 stone in weight. It's fine. The tests are all, this is the most frustrating thing in the world. When they turn around and say, your tests are normal, you're fine, off you go.
It's all in your head, basically.
It's in your head. It's in your head. And I can't even tell. It is a travesty of the medical health profession if that is the case. Right. That somebody who is so proactive in their health, which I am, is so proactive with their health, who's just not willing to tolerate being left like this with this illness for the next 20 years. I'm just not willing to do it.
Right.
And so actually the doctor should be admiring that. And don't get me wrong, that was one bad experience I do have a good relationship with some doctors now, but only because of that reason, that they know that I'm just relentless with it. I'm just not going to give up.
Yeah. And I mean, it's pretty fortunate that you did have a science background, because you were then in a position to say, well, okay, they're not going to help me, so I'm going to need to take matters into my own hands. And that's basically what you did over the next several years, right? You tried to research what was going on with you. So what had you found out, and then what did you try over the years to try and improve your health condition?
Oh my God, brace yourself. Take a deep breath, because this could take a while. So I'll try and summarize it actually in a small kind of segment. So I had tried and researched PQQ, pyrrolquinone, which was really, really good. That's really good for mitochondrial biogenesis, really great. CoQ10, which is one of the only things that any chronic fatigue syndrome specialist will recommend. I tried B vitamins. I tried magnesium. I hadn't tried zinc a lot. I tried going gluten-free, low GI FODMAPs. I tried to go SIBO diet, which was effective actually, and I'll come back to that later. I had cut out dairy. I definitely avoided any soy whatsoever. And to this day, I will still avoid soy because it's the devil's food. I tried to cut out anything grains. I've already said gluten, haven't I? So I tried to cut out all of that out. I'd supplemented. I mean, if you see upstairs right now, you see this bag down here, I have tried every known vitamin supplement, vitamin K2, vitamin D, cod liver, omegas, gone lactose free. So I've got I've done loads of methylation supplements as well. So I have done pretty much everything that you possibly can do in terms of every vitamin, every supplement. So I've done loads of work and research on methylation, MTHFR, which always sounds like a swear word to me. But I tried loads of different B12, B9. I think I alluded to this earlier, didn't I? And my view on this is, again, coming from a science background, this is something to do with micropathology linked to biochemical and molecular issues. It's got to be down to that. So, fact, it is. So I looked into methylation, looked at the fact that methylation is involved in CoQ10, carnitine, glutathione, which is really important for detox. I've looked into oxidative stressors. Sulfur metabolism is really important as well, and that's directly linked to the B1 conversation. And I've done some genetic testing as well, and they'd identified NTHFR issues, which is methylation issues in the ability to process B12 and B9. They'd identified SUOX issues, sulfur oxidase issues, which identified issues with converting sulfites to safe sulfates. And so I knew that these were issues. Then you factor in the fact that B12, B9, and all of these wonderful Bs, B6, B3, NADH, which I'm a huge proponent for, zinc, magnesium, they're all linked to methylation, as is B1. So then, because B1, I believe, is involved in RNA and DNA synthesis.
Yeah, and also the process of methylation itself requires ATP, right? And so one of the things that you often find when there is an impairment in when there's impairment in energy metabolism, say because of a problem with B1, then the process of methylation slows down simply because of a lack of energy. That's one of the first things to go, and it's kind of like a natural reallocation of resources. So yeah, there's an indirect link there as well.
Yeah, for sure. And then I came across your videos, right, and it was like an epiphany. So a huge thank you for those, because the medical professionals have helped, but in the main, have not, right, because it can die. The NHS, I love, I adore, I think they're amazing, and no criticisms whatsoever in terms of acute treatment of conditions. Amazing. But when it comes to chronic conditions, I'm afraid I've had to find all of this out through help of your people like yourself, through all of the videos that I've watched online. And I came down to the acknowledgement and understanding of the wet beriberi, the dry beriberi, and the gastrointestinal beriberi issues that you have talked about in the plethora of videos that you've created.
Fast forward to, what was it, about 6 months ago, right? So you saw the videos, you figured, okay, these symptoms kind of match up with my own. I resonate with some of this stuff. So you decided to get some benfotiamine and start dosing it, right?
I did, yeah, I did. And I started low dose. Actually, originally, I started a few years ago, started low dose. And that had awful side effects. Did you want me to talk about those?
Yeah, I mean, you tried it years ago, but you said you had these side effects, and so you basically called it a day and stopped taking it. And it was only recently, 6 months ago, that you'd started again because you'd been looking more into the subject.
So I started really low, had all those side effects many years ago, then restarted again about 6 months ago. and found, I've got to be honest, some side effects returned, pretty bad ones. And I thought, this isn't great. What am I going to do? But then again, I react to a lot of things side effecty anyway, if that's a word. So I then increased my magnesium, increased my zinc levels, increased my potassium levels, but I know you've got to be a bit careful with those. Definitely increased all my other B complex stack. And I'm doing really well. Everything's improved, Elliot. Everything is improved. So I have a significant increase in energy. I'm able to do far more than I've ever been able to do before. I have seen a rapid increase in cognition. So my memory's really improved. I'm able to grab words from absolute nowhere. My mind is more agile. I've got a greater lexicon because of what's happened. I'm now working 60 hours a week, which is a bit challenging. 60 hours a week. I'm exercising perhaps around about 15 minutes a day. I am playing badminton for 2 hours a week, and I am able to do hot yoga, which is a killer. But that should be called HIIT yoga, not hot yoga, to be honest with you. And that I'm doing for about an hour and a half every Sunday as well. I've got a good social life. Everything has just improved. It's just really, really improved. So B1 has really helped to calm everything down in terms of my digestive system as well. My motility has improved as well, which has been really powerful. I feel more healthy in terms of my gut generally. And I think a lot of our issues are caused by the gut. That's just my belief.
Yeah.
And that, without question, is it is the benfotiamine that has had a massive effect in that, but it's everything that I've done to support the introduction of benfotiamine and B1 into my cells with all the other Bs that I've been taking, all the other minerals that I've been taking, which has enabled me to be able to maximally use benfotiamine, for example.
Right.
But without question, I know TTFD that you've spoken about before.
Yeah.
That's the next step for me.
It's I think it's worth a try, that's for sure, especially because I mean, it's interesting that you had this reaction to Benfo all those years ago. I wonder, like you maybe you started at too high of a dose, but also it does seem that for some people, if they don't have that baseline of other nutrients behind it, then it can trigger these pretty substantial symptoms. So you've said that, okay, you've used the benfotiamine, but you've also had to use other B vitamins behind it, potassium and magnesium, which again are pretty common. And you also said that you benefited from zinc as well. But okay, so how long did it take for you to see those improvements? You started 6 months ago. Was it immediate? Did it take weeks? Did it take months? Has it been a gradual thing?
It has been a gradual thing. It's been a gradual thing. Again, with me, if something feels absolutely amazing, I'm like, oh my God, need to try more, try more, try more. And so last weekend, for example, I took about 750 milligrams, which was a bad idea. A very bad idea. Perhaps shouldn't have taken that much. But again, it's a learning curve. And again, the way that I mitigated against that is I increased my magnesium, my potassium. Right. And then it brought me to, and molybdenum, of course. And it brought things back down to a stable level.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, it's been a gradual thing. But as I said, I'm up to 250 milligrams of benfotiamine now. And I believe, what is the actual dose? Where can you go up to? I hear different reports.
There's really no limit. Ultimately, it depends. I mean, oftentimes for benfotiamine, the average therapeutic dose ranges from anywhere between, say, 200 milligrams to 2,000 milligrams. Oh for thiamine hydrochloride, it's generally going to be above 1,000 milligrams per day, even up to 3,000. For TTFD, oftentimes is much lower. But it really does depend on each person, and it takes time. Like you said, for instance, you had to build up over those 6 months to get to a point where you can even tolerate 250, and that's not even every day for you, right? It's every other day. And some people find that helps. Here's a question, though. So you'd started this 6 months ago. Had you changed anything else 6 months ago? Like, how can you be sure? Are you sure that it's the benfotiamine, or could it have been like coincidence?
There's no coincidence whatsoever. Absolutely none whatsoever. The benfotiamine has had a profound effect on my health and well-being. It's had a profound effect on absolutely all of the systems that we've spoken about.
Right.
Digestive. My anxiety levels have gone lower. My peripheral neuropathy is almost, not quite, but it's dissipated. My brain power has improved. That's the other thing as well. I get far less twitching.
Right.
Far less twitching. At one time, as I said, I may have said earlier, it felt like 1,000 ants were walking through my system at all time, crawling under my skin.
Hmm.
That's dissipated. So I am just feeling generally really, really much better. Much
Yes,
better.
this is just amazing. Really, really, really amazing how basically one B vitamin or as part of a protocol can kind of really just turn someone's situation around. I mean, this is why I am so adamant on continuing to try and raise awareness of it, because it never fails to amaze me how simple it can be sometimes. And like you said, you're still dealing with the H. pylori and the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It's like this therapy is not the cure for everything, but it can certainly help a lot of things for a lot of people. Not everyone, but a lot of people. So it seems as though that was certainly the case, and that's obviously why you've got in contact with me to share your story. I wish I'd have known this back then, 3 years ago when we had our original consultation. I was working off of test results back then. I was thinking, okay, so if the test results show that someone's low in B1, then that's when we would recommend it. But as I've learned since then, tests are pretty useless with regard to determining whether someone will respond or not. So I threw that out, and I'm very happy that you kind of stayed in touch by watching the videos and figured out that it could help you, because that's I mean, it's really just awesome. It honestly is. Okay, so where you currently are then, what's your plan moving forward? You've seen this improvement. It's not perfect. How, in terms of a percentage, how far would you say you've come into, let's say 100% would be optimal health or no symptoms? Where would you say you currently are now?
Oh, that's a great question. It's relative to your position at the time. So 5 years ago, when I compared my situation with others, which, to be honest, you should never really do, but then I would have said 80%. Today, I don't look at it in those kind of terms. I think it's a sliding scale. But I have to say, when I look at what I've got is technically a disability, right? I've had it for more than 6 months. It's a diagnosed disability. It's horrendous. I know that I am that close to optimal health. I would go with 90%.
Right.
90%. I'm that close. And when this H. pylori issue and co-infections, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth issue is resolved, I'll be flying. And B1 has had a big part to play in that healing journey. No doubt about it at all.
Right. That's really great to hear. And of course, it's really based on your search for truth, and your basically taking things into your own hands and independently. It helps that you've had a science background, but there's many people without a science background who've also done this, who decide that they want to figure out what is going on with them, and ultimately you deserve to get better. The sheer number of years that you've had to deal with this, and the fact that you've spent so much time and effort searching for information, searching for knowledge, and trying to gradually, incrementally improve things, without doubt, all of those many years of kind of searching and trying new things has contributed. But again, it sounds as though B1 was kind of like a game changer in your case, and that's really awesome. Okay, what do you think? Here's a question. You might not know the answer to this, but I'm curious. Why do you think you're someone who responded to B1? Given that you've taken like B complexes in the past, it's unlikely that you would be deficient per se. I mean, you don't eat a junk food diet, and you're not a chronic alcoholic or anything. So why, I mean, based on, I don't know, the information that you've seen online or what you've learned from my videos or whatever, why do you think you were someone who responded to this when you don't necessarily have the traditional risk factors for deficiency? I wouldn't say that you did anyway.
Why did I
Like is in a medical conventional deficiency, let's say, something that a doctor would diagnose. And I'm not saying this is out of the ordinary, because I think most of the people who do respond do not have those risk factors. But I'm just wondering, is there any kind of genetic link? Do you think do you have a family history of any of these types of symptoms, or did it basically just come out of the blue?
Oh, that's a bloody good question. Um, I know of certain family members that have had Korsakoff syndrome
Huh.
brought on by excessive consumption of alcohol.
Huh.
Um, so I know that they were unable to read watch hands and clock hands. They were unable to spell the word black backwards or any word backwards. And they were unable to function until they had a high dose of vitamin B1 given to them in hospital. So
Interesting.
that is in my family. Not the alcoholism part, but I do know certainly that person had a Korsakoff's syndrome as a result of that.
Hmm.
Um, my auntie had MS, which I know there is a link. Parkinson's, my grandfather had.
Hmm.
My other grandmother had Parkinson's as well.
That's
And
interesting.
my father had coronary heart disease. Yeah.
Right. So maybe in your case there is some kind of an underlying, let's say, SNP in genetics for thiamine handling. I mean, this is pretty common, and a lot of this is not going to be picked up. It's not even tested for on most of the genetic panels. There's not even been that much research in it. But for instance, you have proteins which get thiamine into cells, or you have proteins which use B1, which require it, and they have a slightly higher or slightly lower affinity for B1. So it means that someone's requirement or their demand from the diet is going to potentially be higher. And they're the kind of people who might develop these conditions. They might be more likely to develop Wernicke encephalopathy or Korsakoff if they drink alcohol. Not everyone does, but some people do. And there is like an individual variability. And again, you mentioned these neurological type conditions, Parkinson's, MS. There are links between thiamine genetics and these conditions, or thiamine handling problems, especially Parkinson's. So I wonder whether you are someone who does have this underlying genetic tendency, and it's not enough to cause a full-blown disease of metabolism, they're called, but in some people at least, it can mean that the demand is higher. And if you've got these long-term SIBO, digestive issues, H. pylori, etc., then it could be the case that over many years you were basically just not absorbing enough, or perhaps your demand is higher for whatever reason, and therefore you're someone who's responded. I think it's kind of impossible to know the exact reason unless there are clear, identifiable triggers. Even when testing, it can be impossible, but it seems that there's just so many people who experience basically very similar trajectory or response as you have. It's interesting to speculate, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we'll look. Thanks so much for coming on, man. That really an excellent testimonial, and thanks basically for reaching out and sharing your story. I think it can act as inspiration for others, and you've seen the other ones that I've done, and I think your story really is a testament to, if someone is willing to step outside of the box of conventional medicine, take their health into their own hands, then they can find solutions. And there's not always be one. In fact, most of the time it's probably not. But there is a solution, I think, for most people, vast majority of people. There is going to be an actionable, practicable solution that they can do, whether that's a simple diet change or a nutrient or some other kind of a therapy, which can bring them out of this state of disease and towards better health. And it is a journey. Is there anything else that you feel that we haven't touched on, or that you'd like to share, that we'd like to finish up on, or shall we call that a day?
One, I think, important thing to add would be that with the chronic H. pylori infection, of course, one of the things that they give you is metronidazole. which will deplete your B1 like anybody's business.
Mm.
So as a result, that 4 lots of antibiotics over the last 12 months means that
Huh.
I had to increase my B1.
Interesting. I didn't know that. So you'd had 4 rounds of metronidazole, otherwise known as flagyl in the US. Huh. Okay. Yeah. So that in and of itself is enough to spiral someone down. And in someone like yourself who perhaps already has an underlying dependence or requirement for more B1, then that's enough to really, really.
Send you over the edge.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, excellent that you tried B1 and that yeah, that's a super interesting piece of information, and that's ironic because they even recommend that for some cases of SIBO which are difficult to treat, and it's problematic in someone who already has this impaired absorption. Probably has bad status anyway. Sometimes a B1 deficiency can cause SIBO in the first place, but then they treat it with a drug that actually causes a deficiency or worsens it. A recipe for disaster, really. And this is
It is, yeah, it was.
real
Because I
problem.
remember I was taking metronidazole, I was thinking, Lord, why do I feel so crap?
Right.
What's going on? Actually, now I think back to it, that was one of the reasons why I started taking B1.
Interesting.
There you
Interesting.
go. Yes, it all comes full circle. That's exactly right. Yeah. So actually, we have H. pylori to thank for this latest journey. So thank you very much, gift of a bacteria.
The body works in weird ways. I mean, maybe in some way that was the universe trying to communicate something, lead you down a path towards discovery of something that actually you needed in a more systemic way.
True.
Either way, look, excellent, amazing story. Really great to have you on. Thank you so much again, and it was really a pleasure to speak with you again and catch up.
It's always a pleasure, Elliot. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay then. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye. So thanks for tuning in, guys. If you want to find Vish on social media, he also has his own YouTube channel. You can find that in the links in the description below. And if that's everything, thanks again, and see you in the next one.